Hey, what's up, QP Nation? Thanks for joining our Workforce Wednesday podcast slash webinar slash digital live conversation. I'm really excited to have Jason Lauritsen, somebody who I've had the pleasure of working with, working around, listening to, just generally collaborating with over the years. One of those guys that you just can't get enough of. His head is very much wrapped around the future of work. Um, what's next? What's important for us to be thinking about? And his background really puts him in a great position for that. He spent time as an HR exec, as a recruiter, as an HR technology guy, a salesperson, a marketer, a speaker, a writer. Just awesome perspective on how all of these dynamic and complex elements of the human being in the workplace come together, and really glad to have him with us today to talk with you all for the next 20 minutes or so about the future of work and what we should be paying attention to. So what's up, Jason? Welcome to the what we're calling Workforce Wednesdays. I don't know if that title is going to stick. You're the very first, the inaugural member of this this initiative that we've undertaken at QuestionPro, an opportunity for me to shoot the breeze with smart people like you that are on the ground and paying attention to what's important, and keeping an eye on the future of work, for us to spend 20 minutes kind of chewing the fat on it. And as we thought about kind of this inaugural episode, your name came to mind very quickly as the right person for the first gig. So thanks for finding some time to spend with us.
Thanks for having me. I'm not sure how I feel about the pressure of if after the first episode, it might be like, this was a total train wreck. Let's not do this anymore. Why did we do that?
Yeah. And, or boy, we learned our lessons the hard way. The next episode is going to look completely different. It's going to be a different format. I might not even be talking anymore.
We'll see how it goes. Yeah. No, happy to be here, man. Anytime.
Cool. Well, so, we won't go into a lot of history that you and I have. We have a ton of it. Let's just acknowledge that. I always love the things that you're doing, but also saying, and the conversations that you're part of. And that's kind of what I want to do today. Is maybe the way that I was thinking about this as I was getting ready was, I've been so kind of laser focused on the world of called HR analytics, people analytics, survey-based analytics, employee experience, culture measurement, all that stuff that I've kind of like put, I don't want to say earplugs, but I've put some blinders on in terms of some of the other things that are going on out there in the world of work, and as it relates to people and just how organizations are differentiating.
Sure.
And I know that you're very much like in the thick of that. In fact, I think you just got back from HR Technology, which was last week, HR Tech Conference, which was in Vegas last week, a huge HR conference, and lots of cool stuff going on there. So share with us, like what comes to mind when somebody asks you about what's happening these days in the world of work. What are the things that you talk about? What are the things that you hear about? What's kind of hot? What's not?
Sure. It's in the timing of the question's good, because even going back to, I don't know about you, but when I was in the HR leader seat, corporate HR leader seat, I used to always like to have conversations with my HR tech partners, even those that were like prospecting me or that we were already customers. I always liked having those conversations because it always seemed like the technology companies were paying attention farther out than I was, right? I always wanted to know what they were thinking about. And so when I go to the HR Tech Conference every year, I'm always interested to look and see, which companies are spending money, how are they packaging and branding themselves, like which segment seems to be growing, which segment seems to be shrinking. And so it's always literally what I try to answer for myself often is, what does at least the technology industry think is happening? Or what is their customer sending them? So the timing is good. And here's where coming off this conference and the conversations I had last week and just kind of observing the market, the headlines for me are a couple of things. The big headline, as it relates to, so, I spend most of my time, as you well know, thinking about employee engagement, employee experience, performance management, and stuff that sort of surrounds those three, or that domain. And at least as it relates to my domain, I would say the headline is generally confusion. In that I think, you walk around there and there's a bunch of, well, like you guys do survey and you talk about employee experience. And then there's a company that does benefits, benefits delivery, and they're saying they're in the employee experience business. And then there's somebody over here that's doing talent development and their employee experience. And I think that the buyer, as I, even in talking with some of my clients, or just being out doing what I do, I talk to people and they talk about, they're coming around to this idea that employee experience is a thing, right? It's emerging as something they're supposed to be paying attention to, but I don't know that they're sure exactly
what that means,
what it is or what it means. And the technology, like every year at HR Tech, there's sort of a buzzword that you pick up on. The marketers have all kind of piled on it. Like last year, it was AI. Everybody had an AI-enabled solution. It was AI in last year. This year, I would say AI was still there secondarily, but I would say this year it was employee experience was kind of the thing that we heard about a ton. And that always makes me a little nervous, because when if I'm on the buyer side of that and I see everybody's calling their product employee experience, then I'm kind of like, oh, that's just a marketing thing. Not paying it. I can wait, and by next year it'll be a different thing, right? There'll be something new. So that's one of the things.
It's interesting though, because that is the evolution of really any, business imperative in the realm of people that we've seen. I mean, 20 years ago we were probably having the same conversation around employee engagement. Like that sounds really interesting, but what does that mean?
Yeah,
it probably took us 5 to 10 years to figure out, or at least to kind of all get in the same, ballpark around what that term meant. Culture was probably 5 years ago. Everybody was talking culture, and that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. I think we're starting to get more, we're starting to get smarter about really what that is, and now we're kind of there with employee experience. I mean, all those things kind of meld together. But
I worry about it though from there's two things I think happen generally. Is in some cases, when you see that happen, it means that it's an early sign of progress. You're starting to see like, okay, well, we're getting attention to this, but just because we have attention on it, that'll basically bring more focus and we'll get more clarity, and that'll mean progress. But then at the same time, the other thing you see happen is you see a new term come up, and it's like, so think about like when we went from recruiting to talent acquisition, or we went from employee satisfaction to employee engagement to whatever's next, is that sometimes it's just a repackaging or a rebranding of an old concept. And I'm not sure that I think there's a lot of cynicism in the market around, like, when you see these new concepts come up, is this really a new concept, or is this just a new packaging of an old idea? And employee experience, I think, in my opinion, employee experience represents a pretty massive potential shift. I think it's an inflection point for the work that we are involved in. So what I worry about is how they're interpreting that, or being dismissive of that. So before,
and I know there were kind of three headlines that you wanted to get to. I don't know if we'll get to all three, but just for a second, if this term employee engagement is to be something more than a shiny object or a repurposed concept, I mean, you said it has the potential to be, paraphrasing, kind of game changer. What does that have to look like in your mind in order for that to be to really be a differentiator in the world of work? How do people need to be thinking about employee experience?
Well, I think it'll have to do with practice, and I think it has to. I mean, so it's sort of what falls out of it afterwards in terms of when we see the buzzword come out. When I start digging in and I start talking to, and right now, honestly, I'm not entirely sure. Like, I think what's happening with employee experience is that employee experience really is it's an evolution of our work around employee engagement. It's not the same. Employee experience has just kind of been hidden in the background of employee engagement work for years, and that we knew, an engagement survey, you know this well, like in a traditional engagement survey, we're measuring this thing called engagement, which we've come to, at least most of us agree, at least, that it is an outcome of an experience that we have at work, right? So depending on how I'm treated by my manager, if I have my tools, I know what's expected of me, whatever it is, I am more engaged, which means I'm a better advocate, I perform better, yada, yada, whatever the outcomes are you're talking about.
Right.
Within any engagement survey, there were all these diagnostic items that tell you, that are sort of a measure of my experience. Does my manager care about me and give me feedback? Do I get clear goals? Do I feel aligned? Do my leaders communicate? Whatever those things are, all of those things are a measure of experience. And so it's been built in, but we've been treating it reactively. So we measure engagement. If engagement sucks, then we go look at these diagnostics, and then we try to retroactively go back and fix whatever
the
parts
outcome,
of the,
which is based on everything that's already happened, right?
Right. Yeah, and it's all reactive. And by the way, the prescriptive, the diagnostic we're using is someone else's definition of what experience is, and has nothing to do with our intentions about what kind of company we're trying to create. And so experience has been there sort of in the background, and what's happening now, and the reason that I think usually where I feel like you can tell if this is a real trend is if you can look at the other disciplines that drive business, and you can see the same discipline or same practices in place, being taken seriously and delivering value, because HR is always a laggard when it comes to that. And usually what we follow is marketing practice. And so the part of the reason I think employee experience is for real is that organizations are 5 years into investing in customer experience and customer experience measurement and management, experience design. UX and technology is all about intentionally thinking about experience and designing to experience to achieve a specific outcome for the user. And so experience is a practice that already exists, that just hasn't, in terms of the design, the intentional design and measurement, it just hasn't made it to employees yet. And so we've been using an inferior practice. And so usually I see that, I think you can, an example of that would be in talent acquisition is the same way. Like you can predict often what's going to happen in talent acquisition by going back 3 to 5 years and looking at what the trends were around marketing and sales automation and whatever, because it gets mastered elsewhere. And then HR goes, hey, we should try that over here.
Yeah.
So that's a big reason I am really excited about experiences, because there's a whole body of practice out there already that is just porting it over and applying it inside the organization.
Well, so everything that you just shared with me and I think the audience is huge validation to certainly the way that we're thinking about it, and this is in no way meant to be a sales pitch, of course, but it is awesome to know that differentiation, or to hear you say that differentiation is really going to come into play when we start treating employee experience just as we do any other important operating system in our business, whether that's marketing or pick your favorite.
Right.
We know it's important. Like we're not going to debate that anymore, but how we use it, how we leverage it, how we invest in it, what kinds of resources we throw at it, really how serious and intentional are we getting about it? Like that's really where the money is, and that's always where the money is, right? I mean,
intention is always.
Yeah. And we're good. We world of work, we HR, you and I can both say that because we've been in that seat. We're good at paying lip service, right? We know it's good.
Right.
But how do we actually, operationalize it? That's
well,
cool.
and like I said, a big reason I'm as kind of bullish about employee experience as I am is that executives, if you sit down with a room full of executives or a CEO, like you don't have to convince them, you don't have to spend a lot of time convincing them that the customer experience you create is important. if you treat your customers like a-holes, you're not going to probably have a lot of customers. Like the experience you create for them, proactively thinking about that. Or even if you say like, okay, CEO, we want to create a dinner or an event for all of our most valuable customers. You're not going to leave that to chance. Just like, let's throw them in a room, see what happens, and then measure on the backside how it went so that then we can fix it for next time. Like, you're not a chance. You're going to,
not a chance in the world.
You're going to orchestrate every single part of that dinner to make sure, or that event, to make sure those customers have the exact kind of experience you want them to have. So they leave there thinking, man, like, not only am I going to continue to do business, I love these people and I'm going to try to do more. I'm going to tell stories about it. But we don't bring that same, like, they get that. It's like, okay, now let's put our best employees around the table.
Yeah.
And we treat it just like that first example. We just sort of like, let's see how it goes and then measure and see how they feel about it. And then maybe we'll fix it down the road. It's just insane.
Yeah, I heard somebody, I more than heard, a woman who we've been collaborating with, works for a large cellular organization, and she's a director of employer brand. And she said, very simply, this kind of comes down to, you cannot ask your employees to create a better experience for your customers than they themselves are having. You just can't do that. Like, and yet we've been doing that.
Yeah, every day. Every day. So yeah, I think that, so that was the, so confusion, and confusion specifically around employee experience, I think is sort of the dominant issue we have to solve at the moment. And seems like the trend. And the beauty of it in there is there's a lot of people that want to be a part of it. Some people want to be a part of it for the right reasons. And some people are just trying to ride the gravy train and attach whatever they do to the employee experience trend. And that's where I feel kind of bad for the buyer right now around technology, because it's, you got to be really diligent in sorting out the difference. And that starts with you getting really clear on your intentions around experience and what you're trying to accomplish, and then matching technology tools to help you deliver on that, as opposed
you're not gonna find a technology that you can plug in, turn on, and it's gonna fix employee experience for you. It is how you use it. Does it facilitate a more meaningful conversation? But the human beings behind that still need to be very active.
Absolutely.
What else? What kinds of things? I know you've been talking a lot about performance management. You have a book that's out. Yep. It's not really all that new anymore, but
it's a year already.
Oh my gosh, unbelievable.
Crazy.
And we'll make sure that you mention that at the end here before we sign off. But what else are you hearing that's just kind of interesting or head scratching or worth paying attention to?
I think, well, two things. I think performance management is still, like, it seems like that's continuing to be a topic that's a head scratcher for a lot of people, right? We know that our old processes suck. Everybody's kind of on board with that. Yeah. What to do going forward is still an open question, and there's a whole bunch of technology options you can go find. Again, start with intention, get clear about what you're trying to accomplish. So I think that's still a thing that people are wrestling with. The other interesting thing out there is there's still a lot of AI, right? There's still a lot of talk about AI. I think as an industry, in the last year, there's been some people like John Sumser and some others that have done some real research around, everybody was saying they're doing AI. He went and talked to like every technology company in the industry that was saying they're doing AI. And his conclusion is nobody's doing AI. So you can say you're doing it, but it's not really AI. Like, what it is we're using math and we're using algorithms and we're calling it AI, which is, whatever you want to call it. But I think this is a good and a bad trend, right? It's another, like, what is AI? AI is being used to kind of try to baffle people into spending money and thinking we're doing something really cool in the worst side, on the marketing side. But on the good side, there's some really cool technology applications out there and I think as we think about how do we deliver a great experience, there's some really cool technology that's coming that it's not AI in the sense of like, it's not, self-learning artificial intelligent robots or whatever, but there's some cool, things using, like, think about Amazon and the algorithms that like know what you want to buy, or chatbots that you interact with that on a very simple level, like they can help you find your way quickly to something that, like in a help center. Stuff like that, where it's applied machine learning and algorithms and math to build technology that can really make life easier on the employee, make life easier on the manager, make life easier on HR. There's some cool stuff around that I think if you're smart about, again, you got to still be very clear on what kind of experience you're trying to create and why. And you have to know your employees pretty well. But if you have that as a baseline, man, there's some cool technology coming that to help you enable that.
So again, even in the conversation around AI, it's still very much about experience, which is interesting. And I think part of what I heard you say, which is exciting for me, is that if at the very least, whatever we're calling AI is helping organizations get more predictive about, let's just say, the workforce, or what's coming next, or how these things may impact downstream other desired employment outcomes, whether again those are engagement or experience or whatever, both. It's even if it's a better algorithm and a better spreadsheet, if it's getting us to a better answer before that answer is old, or before it's something that we can't do anything about. That's exciting.
Yeah, I think it is. And I mean, you talked about you've been focused on analytics and all that, but I don't think that's necessary. I mean, that is I think that's all part of kind of the same conversation we're having, right? We started, I don't know, I'm trying to remember I'm trying to, I go back and think about, okay, buzzwords, what were the buzzwords? Employee experience, AI. I think before that was big data or cloud. I'm not sure which. It was one or the other. It was 1 year. But if I go back to big data, and this is to your point, how do you know which one's a staying power? We started talking about big data probably 4 or 5 years ago. That was kind of the overriding dominant theme. And in the conversation about big data, it sort of lifted up a lot of thinking and tools and approaches around how do we have all the stuff we know about employees. What can we do with that to actually start being predictive or being proactive in the kinds of things we're delivering or what we're doing or how we're thinking about things? How can we be better informed about people decisions? And it's taken years for some of that to come to fruition. And some of the stuff we're now calling AI
That's interesting.
Is just advanced technology. It's using algorithms and math and different technology that's more evolved now that can go back into the big data and deliver insights to us that helps us either deliver things of value to employees or helps us get smarter about our employees and deploying research and talent, and also honestly pushing back on some things. I'll give you this just because you'll love this in the world that you're in. One of the headlines that stuck with me, and I think this is an example sort of this data, when we start really looking at data the right way. But Marcus Buckingham was there to talk about some of the research they were doing at the ADP through the ADP Institute or whatever. And they've done 2 big global kind of engagement studies. And interestingly, the group that they found, of all the different subgroups that they evaluated, the most highly engaged group of employees were employees that work as part of a team at their, within their work group, but work remotely 80% of the time. And that flies in the face of a lot of traditional, what we would think. We've got organizations that will tell you need to be together. And actually, when they compare people that are on the team, so the variable, we're both on teams.
They're collaborating, but they're
on a team. But the group that is at the office every day versus the group that's 80% remote, there's a fairly sizable gap between their engagement. Just the difference of having to go to the office and deal with that versus being remote. And they didn't, there's a lot you can assume about why that's the case. But I love the fact that it's a way of sort of using data to push back on, we've been thinking that if you're remote, there's an issue, like there's a problem. You're going to be more disengaged if you're remote, which is sort of has been a general assumption in and some data will play that out, but they're not accounting for or differentiating like the team you're on or the quality of the team you're on. And they were
or
basically
what function you're in, what you're doing. Yeah.
And they're advocating for the fact that team is really the differentiating factor in that. And I thought that was super interesting and a really, it's something they're measuring differently and analyzing differently against their data sets. And just, I love that as an example of when we really start using and thinking about our data and analytics in a better way, it leads us to, like, there's some things we think we know for sure that we probably should be pushing back on.
Yeah, and I think the better the data or even the experience around getting that data,
right.
It makes it much easier to start drawing some of those inferences or to, identify those themes, correlations, whatever. Which I think is really, like, I think maybe one of the biggest downfalls to the world of surveys over the last 5 years, at least in the employee space, was that, it ended with a report.
Right.
And it was kind of like good, bad, red, green, whatever, but you didn't really know what to do with it from there. And there was so much going on behind that, right? Like, and you never really were able to get down to the nit and the grit. Like, on the surface, I understand what this is telling me, but why is it the way that it is, right?
Yep.
And that's, I think, a lot of what you're just talking about is getting that data and doing something better with it.
Well, and there's still a huge gap in just engagement practice around that today. Like, I still think that's the fundamental problem we have, or one of the fundamental problems we have with engagement surveys and data, back to kind of your business, is that, this is one of the places where it's not wise to model after marketing, is because marketing can treat a group of customers as a group of general customers because they're dealing to like averages and faceless kind of customer.
There's a persona there, right?
A persona, as opposed to like when the people you're surveying are like right over there, they sit right there. When you ask them for their feedback and then it goes into this blah and you don't address their specific issue, they're still pissed at you whether or not you take action on, some other stuff too. And so, we've got to get more personalization and get smarter with our data at an individual level too. So, and I don't see too many solving that problem yet. We're still And honestly, a lot of that isn't technology. It's like, go talk to them, build a relationship with that person and talk to them. So,
I mean, and I've already said it on this call, I say it all the time that there's no survey or survey tool or technology on the planet that's going to solve your problems and or maybe even give you the answers. But if it fuels a better conversation, that's 90% of the way there, but you still have to have the conversation.
Right.
So, all right. So I know we're out of time. I know you've got some other stuff you got to run to. Obviously, as always, these are conversations that could go on and on. I want to make sure that people, if they want to learn more about what you're up to, or even just plug into some of this, some of the good content you're creating, point them in that direction.
Sure. JasonLauritsen.com is the best place to go to find my stuff and connect to my stuff. My book is called Unlocking High Performance. It looks like that, orange cover. Shameless marketing, right?
Why not?
Got to do what you got to do.
Another one over your right shoulder.
Social gravity's over there, so got to do it. But that's where my website. If you want to connect, Jason at JasonLauritsen.com. Reach out. I promise I will respond and we can chat.
Awesome. Well, hey, man, I can't thank you enough for being, again, the inaugural member of this soon-to-be epic podcast / webinar / who knows what the hell.
Hopefully we didn't ruin it, right?
I don't think you did, man. We can say that. We can say that, yeah. So we'll get back to everybody else out there with another episode sometime down the road, hopefully short term. Thanks again to Jason and to all of you who have listened so far, and have a great rest of your week. Take care.